Okay, fabulous. So first, what we're going to start with is I'm just going to do the shout outs that I need to do. And then, like I said, we are doing Persephone today. I'm super, super excited. She is one of my patron deities. I absolutely love her. I have been working with her for over 15 years at this point. I have a very deep, deep connection to her. I have already been invoking her all day today to have her energy here present with us because the whole point of this is I want to teach you guys. I want to introduce you guys to these deities, and I want you to know how to work with them if you choose to, and then also what cautionary things to look out for because they are dark goddesses, and every deity has things that you need to look out for. So I will end up calling in a circle just to include everybody's energy here who's joining me to make sure that you are protected with that energy that I've already been harnessing here for you today. So, first off, awesome. Thank you for being here, guys. This is Dark Goddess Devotionals Club. We're doing this every Sunday. This week, we're doing Persephone Part 1. I say Part 1 because we're going to do one part for her this time of the year. We will do Part 2 in the spring for our other aspect for her. And with that disclaimer, I am not focusing on her as a goddess of spring right now. That is not her aspect we're going to focus on. We're not going to focus on that part. We're going to focus on the other aspect of her today. Um, and we are doing this with the Divination Academy. If you have not joined us before, thank you for finding us. I am so excited that you are here. We are a pagan academy. We believe that education and everything is free. It should be free and accessible to all. What I am going to do here is, if Zoom will cooperate with me, I will pop in all of our stuff that you need to find us. So first you'll find our Facebook page. That is going to be the best way to be able to get in touch with us. How you join the academy, you send us a friend report, message saying that you want us to join, and an admin will reach out to you. We also have our website where you can look at the certification programs we offer, the classes that we offer. We have study guides, resource lists, all that fun stuff on there. And then we also have our YouTube channel, which eventually this is where this will get posted as well, the recording. And then this is where we have, I think we have over 100 classes on there right now for you to go to watch. Lots of different fun topics. So I would definitely check those out. And then my other disclaimer that I always have before I start, I just always start with the preface of, especially with working with the dark goddesses, I come to them from a very very deep place of reverence and respect. I am not coming at them from a place of dark is classified as evil or negative or in a negative or evil way. I am coming at them from a very neutral perspective. I view energies as neutral, as a very like I do view light and dark as a very energetic form. So that I want to make sure that we are coming at them from that perspective and that place of reverence and respect. I also am a solitary practitioner. I have been my entire life. Everything that I do is through study, different teachers, different masters, looking through lots of texts and things like that. So my information is going to come from a lot of different areas. And when I do invocation and when I do circles and things like that, it may seem familiar to things that you have seen, but it's also going to be different. You're never going to find anything that I do like specifically written down anywhere. My stuff is very ceremonial, very folky, and I write everything on my own. So I always put that disclaimer out there because I don't want anybody to think that I'm saying that this is exactly how you have to do things. This is just how my path and my practice has developed. Okay, so before we get into the educational part, as long as everybody is okay with it, I am going to call in just a very condensed version of a circle, very short and sweet. If you've been to my other ceremonies, it won't be nearly that long. I just want to make sure you guys are protected and enveloped in the energy that I already have here with Persephone being here. Um, you may feel kind of a little bit of a rush when I invite you into this and enjoy you into this. Persephone's energy can be big. I'm not having you meet her right away. This is literally just bringing you into my energetic field. So as long as everybody's okay with that, I'm going to take a minute to kind of get myself. Some people call it dropping in. Some people call it getting centered, entering sacred space, starting your container, things like that. All the same thing for me. I usually use the terms container. That's just my phrase for it. So as long as everybody's okay with it, like I said, I'll just take a minute to be able to get in and then cast that. And since I see no objections or hear no objections, I will assume everybody's okay with that. So just give me my minute to get into my container. I call to the spirits and guides of each person in this circle. Come closer and encircle all of us. Encircle us with your protection, your wisdom, and your connection. As we guide our way through this path and journey, will I introduce all of you to the wonder and glorious that is Persephone. I call to the direction of the east, element of air. I call to the direction of south, the element of fire. I call to the direction of the west, the element of water. And I call to the direction of north, the element of air. I call to all guardians and gatekeepers. I call to all ascended masters. I call to all other dimensional beings. I call to all spirit guides, ancestors, those above and those below. Please be with us and surround us in this protection of energy as we meet a divine goddess. Okay, fabulous. So, how I want to start first, and I hope you guys felt that because I definitely felt some stuff shift. She's definitely poking at a couple. First, what I want to do is I want to open it up to like discussion part right now. I want everybody to tell me if you've worked with Persephone, what you know about Persephone. Have you ever felt her call to you? 'Cause I'm gonna go over a lot. A lot of people probably know basics about her, but there are so many different versions of her story, and there's a lot to her, even though we have very, very, very little text about her. So first off, I would like anybody who's willing to either put in a chat, unmute yourself, just let me know. Have you worked with her? Have you not worked with her? Has she called to you? What do you know about
I haven't worked with her, but I have read a lot of her mythology and different stories and correspondence in the spiritual aspect to work with her. But I haven't actually done anything with her yet, except for think about her every time I crack open a pomegranate.
her? I love that. Have you looked at like the historical points and like retellings and stuff, or have you just kind of looked one direction?
I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure what you mean.
So like for some reason, like the retellings is more of like the lore of Olympus style. So have you looked at kind of like those type of stories or just from like an ancient sacred text version?
More of an ancient text version. I have read Lore Olympus and other ones like that, but I love mythology. I love reading all kinds of mythology from all over the world, so that's more my jam. I've known about her since I was like quite young because I read a lot. So
So it looks like given the chat, Winner says she's been around me for years. I feel her call to me. The past week she keeps sending me bats in my yard. Never seen bats there. And told she's been around me since a child. That's actually, I find that those who choose to work with her on a very consistent basis, that becomes a regular thing that I hear. And a lot of them they weren't aware of her being until she really smacks them in the face. She's very known for doing. Michelle, I know nothing. That's fabulous. I'm totally fine with that. I did a ritual one time with, oh, I'd love to know what that ritual was. You can tell me, because there's a lot of different ways you can work. I've only known what mythology was taught about her, and I've never worked with her. That's perfect. Fine, and I love that. I'm totally new to the pagan spirituality, but I feel a little nauseous after the surgery. I know basic. If you feel a little nauseous, if you have water by you, I would recommend drinking some water. Sometimes that can happen if too much energy comes into you too fast. You can kind of feel a little bit dehydrated. At least I've noticed that helps me with that. Otherwise, if you know any type of grounding, try to do a little bit of grounding while you're sitting or standing there, and then I will actually pull back a smidge. What just happened to my computer? Okay, I'm so sorry, guys. I do not know what just happened. My entire computer screen went completely back black and everybody disappeared. Um, But hopefully I didn't get cut off, but in case I did, what I said as well to Morgan is I will also pull back a little bit of my energy as well. My energy is very purifying, so that may be a little bit overwhelming sometimes. So I can pull some of that back as well for you. Then I've not worked with her, but learning about her while reading about Hecate. Hecate and her are super fascinating. Because that I'll talk about that. She's gonna get mentioned when we go over her story. Okay. So I don't think I see any more responses. Did anybody have anything else to add or anything they want to add about her? Or do you guys just want me to jump right into all my information I have about her for you? Joe. Okay. I'll take it. I'll do it. Okay. So if you guys looked at the study guide yet, or if you haven't looked at the study guide yet, I have a ton of stuff in there, like a ton of stuff in there. What I'm going to do here first is I'm going to kind of give you like an overview of kind of symbologies, kind of who Persephone is real quick, and then I'll go over like a brief rundown of her mythology, which is kind of like the basic mythology that most people know. And in the points of that story where there are differences in other stories, other retellings, other sources, I will point out where those differences are, what the difference is about them. And then after that, we'll go through kind of how I've been working with her, how she's presented to me, and how I've heard and dealt with other people who have worked with her. In the study guide, I wanted to make sure that I included, because there is deity work involved with this, kind of like a little bit of basics of how to work with deities, and then also protection of knowing that you're actually dealing with a dark goddess and not a trickster spirit or anything like that. If anything were to appear, I've only ever really dealt with a trickster spirit personally. But I do also have a very different view on demons than others. So I will also include a resource to that into the group chat afterwards. But I do have something in there. I know that Paul wanted to make sure that I had that in there. He asked when we were doing our first club. So I do have signs in there to kind of let you know and how to protect with that. And then what I will do is I will call her here again more strongly so that you guys can meet her energy if you're willing. If you're not willing and you want to be done and leave after that, that's totally fine. Um, and then we will be done for the day. So Persephone, she has quite a couple different names. Persephone is her Greek version. That's how she's known in her Greek face. In the Roman, I always have a hard time saying it, pronouncing it. Personification, I think. I have a really hard time pronouncing Roman names. And then Kore is another version, another name that she's known by. Kore simply means, like in words and translation, a virgin or a maiden who is of at age to be initiated. That is very, very key and very specific. Every single story and retelling and myth that I have ever come across with Persephone, they are very, very specific that she was at the age of initiation. They're very clear on that. They want to make sure like that age, that specific, for many reasons, for later on in her story, helps make it seem a little bit more awkward that her uncle kidnaps her and rapes her. And then other reasons is also because she represents being on that verge of going from a child to womanhood, that transition. She's super, super important Greek goddess, especially in like the Greco-Roman mythology. Her tale has been retold about 300 times now, I think is how many different retellings I have seen a list of and I've come across of. We've really romanticized it nowadays in cultures, and I'll actually talk about that a little bit, kind of why I think that is and why I think it's possible for that, even archaeologically wise. Um, but what's really funny about her is even though she's super, super important, and her and Hades have become really, really, really important now, they were rarely worshipped. They really weren't worshipped then. They weren't worshipped by the Greeks. They didn't really have a lot of temples or festivals. The one festival that really is a lot about Persephone, it really isn't even about her. It's about Demeter. So she's really only included because it's about Demeter's wandering story of trying to find her, and we'll go over that. But it's really focuses on Demeter and celebrating Demeter, and she's only showing up because of that. There was a cult that was dedicated to her in a town in Italy. She had her own temple there. But other than that, like she really didn't have a lot of worship. I personally feel, and a lot of scholars feel, that it is mainly because Greeks really didn't want to talk about the underworld very much. It wasn't a topic they like to talk about because unlike like Christianity, to where good people go to heaven, bad people go to hell. Like everybody went to the underworld when it came to Greek mythology. Like you all went to the one place. You may go to different areas in that place, but you all went to one place. So they didn't really talk about it much. And there's also not a lot of text about that, and about her specifically. She's really only mentioned in like a handful of them. I do have them listed on the very last page of the study guide, just so everybody knows. So if you want to go, and I definitely encourage going and reading where she's all mentioned, the actual text and things like that. But she's really only mentioned in like the Homeric hymn to Demeter, Ovid, Festi, and then the Metamorphoses, book 5, and then Claudian has some stuff that was written about her as well. She's really not mentioned anywhere else. She pops up in a couple of other people's stories, like Odysseus's story and Adonis's story, and a couple others. But other than that, like we don't have a lot of writings about her, or like how to worship her. So it's I find it so interesting. Um, so this is a lot of it is pieced also from the Illyricum Mysteries. I might be pronouncing that wrong. Please don't hold me to that. I'm very bad at that. If you don't know what those are, simply put, like it's a bunch of it goes to the Illyricum cult that was really, really prominent in Athens. It was pretty much Athens, like worst kept secret. You weren't allowed to talk about it. If you were initiated into it, you were allowed to talk about what the initiation rites were. But pretty much everybody in Athens at one point in time was a part of it, so they all knew about it. So that's why we have as much of those texts and writings as we do, but they're still in fragments, so we don't have all of it. But that's where a good chunk of her story will come from as well, and you'll see references to her there. Um, and then a big chunk of her, and what most people know, is she's tied to like with her story with Demeter and like the festivals and everything. Yeah, ancient Bible. Yeah, pretty much. Sorry, honey, I love it. Um, but she's tied to explaining like the changing of the seasons, because of the story and how she's found in the underworld during the winter, and then she's found up here during spring. We'll go over that more as well. She's also shown as sometime being able to travel between the home of Olympus and the underworld, which is actually incredibly rare. A lot of deities don't have that ability. That's not a power that they can do. So that's something that I like to notate and notice about that is she's got a lot more power than people realize. So to go to basic history about her, a lot of the myths, not all of them, there are a couple that don't agree with this, but most of them have the consensus that her parents are Zeus and Demeter. Um, and so that is where her parentage comes from. So her uncles is Hades, and Hades is her uncle by both her mother and her father. I want to point that out. I feel like that's super important when it comes to their story. Um, and then let's see. Okay. Her childhood, from what we get from it, it was pretty like idyllic. She was pretty sheltered. She was literally like Demeter's entire world. There are like texts and stories of like when Demeter was on Earth and she was doing her earthly duties and she was doing what she needed to do for the humans. She would not even separate from Persephone. She would bring her to Earth with her and leave her with the nymphs to babysit her. And so even like that. There's one version of the story where that's where she was when she was kidnapped as well, and we'll go over that. So she was. There's two different ways to look at that. Some people look at Demeter as being like a super overbearing mother who just is super controlling, doesn't want to let go, kind of narcissistic, like that. And other people look at her as very loving and very protective. So that kind of just that ties into the Persephone story, how you view her, how you look at her, the concept of duality with her as well, with her parentage. And then when it comes to like who she was hanging out with a lot, there's a couple different versions. Athena and Aphrodite are common to see with her, as well as Artemis. I see Artemis and Athena with her more than I do Aphrodite. I really only see Aphrodite with her in the one story with Adonis, where they're fighting over him and he chooses Aphrodite, and then Persephone gets pissed and turns Adonis into a boar and he dies. And you really get to see Persephone's rage there. But other than that, like I really only see her and feel her with Athena and Artemis a lot and Hecate. And that's a whole other thing with Hecate. But childhood wise, those two. I think the reason for that, and also like archaeological wise, it makes sense, is because Athena and Artemis they had chosen the life of being a virgin, being chaste, and that was kind of the role that was already being pushed on her at that point. And so it was kind of like the expectation that that was going to be the life that she was going to choose, and that was going to be the path that she was going to be on. So I think that's a lot of times why you see those two as part of the story. It's not very often that I see Aphrodite in there, the child, and her being like in the grove and for her story. So any questions on the basics part of her in the very beginning? I'll go over like correspondence and things that attached her afterwards. Next, I'm going to kind of jump in her story. So like I said, I'm going to go through the major outline, and then where there are key differences in different retellings, I'll tell you what the differences are there. And then you get to choose what type of interpretation you want to go with, if you want to pull from both sides. Because when I talk to you about how I view her and I deal with her, like I want you to just kind of like keep this in mind. Like I pull from every story, every telling for her. And this is a lot of personal work and development with her that I have done to find what she is telling me her version of this story is. Didn't take not being the same thing as it does now. It's just kidnap. So yes, there's two different versions of it. Actually, there's more than two. Yeah. Kidnapped, there is a version where she is legitimately kidnapped, and I'll go over that. There's another version where she went willingly. There's another version where she was just tricked and she wandered and fell and ended up there. So there's a couple different versions with that, but yes. Okay. So what we're gonna start with is in the very beginning. So there's this idea that there's two different versions of kind of like the idea of the start of this. One at the beginning is you have to look at it as she was a very naive, innocent child who didn't know what was going on around her. And then there was the other version that you kind of have to look at the aspect of her to where she was not a young, naive child. She was a teenager who was about, like I said, she was she was at the age appropriate for initiation. So she's not this child anymore. She's definitely a teenager. So she's seeking power. She's seeking her own place, her own seat. And rightfully so in my mind. I mean, she's a very powerful goddess in her own right. She's the daughter of Zeus and Demeter. Like, I don't know how she wasn't given a super powerful title right off the bat. That's a whole other thing for me. But so there's two different versions of it to look at her. Most people choose to look at it as she was more naive. Most people choose to choose that route, that she is childlike, she was naive, she was this goddess of the spring, so she was just frolicking in the flowers with her friends. The two different versions, like I said, that I've seen here are Artemis and Athena were with her, and then another version is Aphrodite and Athena were with her, and they were frolicking in the field of flowers, and then all of a sudden a gaping hole came up in the earth. And some versions, it's a gaping hole in the earth. Other versions, it's a cave that's there. And Hades just comes out charging with his chariots, and he kidnaps her and pulls her into the underworld. So that's kind of where the beginning of her story starts, with her as part of the story. Prior to this, there are versions of the story to where Hades went to Demeter and asked for Persephone's hand in marriage. Demeter said straight up no. There's another version to where Hades went to Zeus first and was telling Zeus how he wanted a spouse and how he wanted a companion. Zeus told him, well, it's been fated that Persephone is going to be your wife. And there are other versions that say that Hades went to go ask for permission. Zeus gave permission. I kind of choose personally to go with the fated part. I kind of choose to go with the fact that like Zeus did not try to willingly orchestrate his own daughter's kidnapping. When you look at it from a fate perspective, it's more of like Zeus found out this knowledge because the three fates, they have more control over things than the gods do. They can't change what the fates have already decided. So Zeus found out this information. My daughter's going to end up being, Hades' wife. Like, I'm going to tell him. Like, there's nothing that I can do about it. Other versions are that like Zeus actually, because he knew that Demeter was going to say no, he was never going to let go. She was never going to let go of her daughter, that Zeus hatched a plan behind Demeter's back to be able to get Hades kidnapped, to be able to let Hades kidnap Persephone to bring her into the underworld. In that version, Zeus even brings Gaia into it. He brings Helios and Hecate into it. In that version, he actually has Gaia make a plant, a very alluring flower called the Narsum flower. It allures Persephone. She goes to go and pick it. And then when she goes to go and pick it, that's when Hades kidnaps her and brings her to the underworld. In that version, she's also not in a field frolicking with her friends. She's actually on Earth already. She is with the nymphs. The nymphs are babysitting her while Demeter is going about her earthly duties. And in that version, the only person who sees her kidnapped is, I apologize, my incense got really, really smoky there for a second. But in that version, one of the nymphs that was watching her was the only one that noticed and saw. I can't remember her name off the top of my head right now. Um, but she noticed and she saw what was going on, and she was so upset that she started crying so hard that she literally melted into a river. And so when Demeter came back to get Persephone, there was nothing there left but a river, and in the river was one of Persephone's ribbons. She saw the ribbon, knew that something was absolutely wrong, and then that's when she started to run frantically through the woods looking desperately for her daughter. This is kind of a point where the story comes together again. In almost all of the retellings, Demeter shows up. She finds that her daughter Persephone is missing. She gets panicked. She gets angry. Different emotions come forward, and she starts just wandering the earth looking for her. While she's wandering the earth and looking for her, she's not fulfilling her earthly duties. So the earth starts to go into famine. And humans start to like there starts obviously they start to die out. It starts to be a big deal. It starts to be a huge issue. If you want to know, there's a whole other version of a story for what Demeter's doing during this time. There's a lot of stories around that, so you can go and look that up. I'm not going to focus on that because I want to focus on Persephone. So when all that's going on, all the people start crying out to Zeus. They start begging him for help, and Zeus realizes, I have to do something about this. Like, I can't just ignore this. All this time, Persephone has been down in the underworld with Hades. And I'll talk about kind of what we know about what was going on down there, because there are parts of the story where we do have writings of what was going on in the underworld during that time. But I just kind of want to finish this part here so that we can cover kind of the why she's representative of the changing of the seasons. So Zeus decides that there's something I have to do. All the other gods of Olympus are like, you have to do something. Like, we can't sit here and let the earth die. The earth dies, humans die. There's no one here to worship us. We want people to worship us. So Zeus decided to strike a deal with Hades because apparently, I guess, before this, we didn't know there was some rule that if you eat fruits of the underworld or eat any food of the underworld, you can't come back. Apparently, that's a divine rule. Never seen before in any text until this story. So that was a rule that we were unaware of, suddenly pops up. And there's a couple different versions of how Persephone ends up with pomegranates, and because that's the fruit that she eats, it's the food that she eats. Because they make the deal for her to spend a third of her year with Hades and the 2/3 of her year with her mother, so that Demeter would be happy. She would start making the harvest grow, start going back to doing her earthly duties, start fulfilling what the humans need and providing their subsistence, their harvest, their bounty. And that deal was struck. May I add, Persephone didn't have any say in this. Like, this deal was all struck without her. Like, she didn't have any say in this. All these other people on the outside were making all these decisions for her. So that she would split her time to make them happy. The reason why she had to stay there is because, like I said, there was that sudden rule that came up, and she had eaten a pomegranate while she was there. And there's a couple different versions of that. One version is she willingly ate it, and she wasn't tricked. Another one was that Hades manipulated her and tricked her into eating it. And there's also different versions of how many seeds that she was left with, and however many seeds she has is however many months that she stays in the underworld with Hades. Some people worship where she spends half the year. Some people worship where she spends third of the year. So that is kind of how she explains that story. She explains the changing of the seasons with her and Demeter, because every time that she comes back, that's when spring, that's when Demeter's happy, that's when things are blooming. When she goes down to the underworld with Hades, that's when Demeter is back to breathing. She's sad, she's not having bounty, she's not harvesting, she's not providing sustenance, and things like that. When it comes to her story of while she was in the underworld, they make it pretty clear in text. She was kicking and screaming at first when she was down there. She was wailing, she was crying, she was fighting every single step of the way. Even in the passage when they talk about her union and marriage, like they're very specific, like it was non-consensual. So this is part of the story that I like to make sure to place emphasis on, because when I talk about how I view her now, I work with her, I do not let go of that. I don't let go of the trauma that she went through, because she did go through trauma. Her marriage was non-consensual. It was rape. I'm not going to deny that, but it does develop into something else later. So that is pretty much what's going on in the underworld while Demeter is down there. We don't know much more than that. Besides that she was really wailing, she was crying. And then I said that I was going to mention Hecate. So in one version, when she is kidnapped or goes willingly, or however you want to view it, because there is a version where she does kind of just wander. That's more of a modern retelling where she goes in there to gain her own power. I personally do pull some of that with my feelings and my work with her, even though they're retellings, because that's the energy that she gives me. That's what she tells me. But in the version where there is one version to where when she's in the field frolicking and she's kidnapped and Gaia is a part of it, Helios, the sun, and Hecate, who is eventually referred to as the moon, and a part of the moon, they are the only two that actually witness this. They are the only ones that hear it. It's very specific in the story that there was not a human, not an animal, not anything that heard the sounds of her screams as she was being dragged to the underworld, except for Hecate and Helios. And Hecate is the one who informs Demeter of what actually is going on. And then they become super besties down in the underworld. Their powers coincide, and I'll go over that when we talk about Hecate. Let's see some other versions of this history, like where she pops up as well, where you see her, that are that are important to kind of like let you know who she is, how her energy feels, to help you do research with her. Is you will also see her showing up. There's kind of like retellings of her. She's kind of being tied to like the retellings of like Psyche and Cupid and the relationship that those two deities are being paired together. So you'll kind of see her pull into that. And then you'll also see her with she's in the Odyssey, book 10 of the Odyssey. When it comes to Odysseus, when he is going down into the underworld, she's the one that facilitates that. It's not Hades. Hades isn't the one that gives the permission. He's not the one that is helping him talk to the dead. He is not the one doing that. It's actually all Persephone. So you'll see her in that, facilitating that. She is in a couple other stories. When it comes to facilitating a hero having to go down into the underworld and complete a task and come up out of the underworld. A huge reason why I think she's tied to that is because her story alone is also very big in this theme, and it's a theme of cannabis. And cannabis is where it's a story or theme of going into the dark and coming back up, completely changed and transformed. So you have to go through some type of trauma and tragedy and going through the dark to be able to pull out and evolve fully as who you are. So that's, I think, a huge reason why she's attached to a lot of those other stories that you'll see, and why she's the facilitator of that, and why she's the one that is the communicator between those that are of the underworld and those that are not, because she goes through that. She is one of the only deities, Hecate can do it, but one of very few deities that can actually like leave the underworld and go back and come back and forth and have that cannabis journey. and really, really show that. Another reason why I feel like she shows that is, again, like personally, through my work with her and through a lot of the different readings and a lot of different stories and a lot of different tellings, um, especially when you see the fact that like she is that facilitator in those stories. She is the one making those answers. When you see her in images, she's on a throne next to Hades as an equal. That is incredibly rare. She, like, you don't really see, especially in Greek mythology, where spouses are truly equals. So, like, she actually gains a lot of power. She starts her story as being, as some people see it, as most people see it, is this kidnapped woman who then is forced and raped in this non-consensual marriage, and then she finds this power to be able to become his equal. Like, she gets as much power as he does. So that's a big reason why that cannabis theme really pulls out. Um, and when we go further into looking into working with her and like what she symbolizes and the energy you can do with her, I'm really going to focus on that. Another place where you're going to kind of see her mentioned is she is one of the deities that's used in the cursed tablets. The cursed tablets are tablets that are used, they're typically used to use death gods for magic transformation. She is considered death god. Obviously, she's queen of the underworld, so she has to be a death god. She kind of way I get her interpretation through text and through my feel from her, she facilitates more with the souls rather than the realm, and Hades focuses more on the realm. And then she has a massive pull and sway over Hades. She can, I mean, especially when it comes, like I said, when it comes to the story of Odysseus, like and Orpheus, even Orpheus as well. Um, Hades was like not even like willing to let them or do anything, and she's the one that persuaded them to like be allowed to even make that attempt. And I mean, Orpheus is the one who like Persephone was super swayed. So that is other places where you'll kind of see her popping up throughout literature, history, and stories. But other than that, which, like I said, she doesn't pop up a lot of places. We don't have a ton of text about her. We don't have a ton of stories about her. And like I said, except for we do have a ton of retellings, like it's about 300 retellings at this point. And that's the biggest reason why I think there's a lot of retellings is because we don't have a lot of actual text about her. There's a lot of holes in her history. There's a lot of holes in how she was worshipped. There's a lot of things that we just don't know. And so that is that's a huge reason why I think there's a ton of retellings. Plus, people give a misconception to Hades, and this could be a whole other video that I can go on of this bad boy trope because he's king of the underworld, and I think everybody's so obsessed with this whole meek, timid woman trying to help the big bad boy change and getting a lot of power on it. And it's okay if my relationship is kind of twisted and abusive and non-consensual if the payoff's worth it. So that's kind of why I feel like we have a lot of those retellings too. Like I said, I pull some of the stuff in the retellings. I think retellings are fantastic. I think it's great to look at them. But I'm not gonna really cover it. Okay, so I think that's kind of all for her story that I can think of. I don't want to go like way too much more in depth and super specific details. Like I said, I did put in the study guide the resources where you can actually go and read line for line all of her stories, and what the different versions are. Does anybody have any questions right now at all about her, about this? Is anybody needing anything from the energy that you're feeling? I did feel a surge, so about a minute and a half ago. So she is definitely coming in stronger. I'm not gonna take it that there's no questions. She feels, I love that she feels good to you for energy. Oh, yes. Okay, so this next chunk, what I'll do is I'll kind of go over correspondences for her, what you can put on her altar, things that help you represent her, things like that. I want to put the disclaimer on here. I'm just giving you ideas. You don't have to do these. You don't have to use these items. You don't have to do this. If she speaks to you and she tells you that she wants something else as an offering, she wants something else on an altar, you listen to her. You listen to what feels good for you. You listen to the path and the vibe that you're getting. These are just touch tone points. These are just things that have worked for multiple practitioners throughout the years to get you started, to get you acquainted, to get you at a touch point if you're not able to feel what she's trying to get to you right away. Is it weird that I can hear her clear? No, it's not weird at all. Not weird at all. She can get really loud when she wants to. She can get super loud when she wants to. So no, I actually love it that she's getting really loud for you and that you can hear her clear as day. That also means that I am invoking her quite strongly right now for you guys, and I'm very glad that she's coming through that clearly. Okay, so some of her correspondences are Goddess of Spring, fertility, plants, reincarnation, ghosts, the power to turn people into animals. She's known for being tied to anamorphosis, which also puts her tied to a cult that I think I forgot to mention earlier. So there was a cult that she was tied to with it, which is the Orpheism, magic rites. There's not much that we know about it. But it's said to have something to do with animism. And then also most of the members that were buried, they have golden leaves buried with them, and a lot of them were dedicated to Persephone. So that is something as well. And then obviously she is the queen of the underworld. As well, that is one of her titles. Symbols that represent her are going to be pomegranates, bats, flowers, deers, the narcissus flower, green and gold, skulls, bones, dark chocolate. She loves chocolate, but specifically dark chocolate. She really likes the bittersweet. She's so much into duality. So anything that you know that is like bitter and sweet. You can use spring to represent her. I also use fall because that is when she returns to the underworld with her beloved Hades. And I say beloved because that is how I view the relationship, and I will talk about that later. Um, Other symbols that can be tied to her as well is anything that has to do with the underworld, anything that has to do with death or the departed. Also the High Priestess Tarot card, the Tarot card, and I personally, and I've had a couple other people tell me that they feel this way as well, the Death Tarot card as well. The reason why I tie that one is the theme of cannabis. The Death card just screams the theme of cannabis to me, and that is all Persephone. So that is why I have that as a symbol as well for her. Offerings. So I'm going to say pomegranates. This is controversial. Some people like to use pomegranates with her. Some people do not. It depends on how you view her story, how you view her energy, how you choose to view that fruit itself, because it's a whole other thing. Some people choose not to use them on her altar, not to use them to represent her because of the story to where Hades tricked her into eating it, and that's how she ended up stuck in the underworld and not able to fully return back to the earth with her mother. So that's why some people don't include it because they take it kind of as like an offense and you're bringing up her trauma in her face. I do include it because it's a part of her story, and that is who she is. That is a part of her duality. And again, it's that theme of cannabis. Like she went through her trauma, she claimed it, she owned it, she got that power. I don't feel that that means that we completely avoid this stuff and not use a symbol. But again, like it is totally your preference, your choice, and what feels fantastic to you. But just noting that is a controversial topic between people who do work with Persephone on if you include that or not. Lilies and poppies are common to be used with her, roses, any wildflowers. I personally feel like she gets really tied to late blooming flowers, like in the fall. She seems to like those for me. Wheat, mints, bats, weeping willows, natural found animal bones, she really likes. For crystals, some people like to use onyx with her. Sometimes I do. I personally really like to use lapis lazuli. I found that a lot of the people really like to tie her to that as well. And then I always have smoky quartz with her as well because that ties to Hades. And from what I have gathered, and from a couple of the other practitioners, from text, from my own personal practice, she loves all things Hades. So if there's something that is tied to Hades and offering to Hades, you can 1,000% offer that to her as well. She's not going to get offended. She's not going to be hurt at all. She's actually going to prefer it. I find that like every altar that I do with her, I have to have obsidian. That's a great one too. Thank you. And tourmaline. Those two. But I find that if I don't have Hades included, she actually usually gets offended and pissed off. But not every practitioner that works with her feels that way. So again, like feel it out for you, feel how she's representing to you. Um, Then let's see, I want to make sure I didn't forget anything when it comes to correspondences. Colors are going to be black, green, blue, purple, and yellow. I don't think I missed any other correspondences. Is there anything that I'm missing? No. Okay. Food. Ooh, food. Yes. So food. Wheat, dark chocolate, mint, wine. She loves wines, especially dark red wines. If you give her beer, I'm gonna warn you, she's gonna laugh in your face. I did that once and she massively laughed in your face. Persephone is gonna be tied to the element of earth because she's strongly tied to the sign of Virgo, and to the Virgin as a symbol and the maiden as a symbol. So element is going to be earth, also with her being the goddess of spring. That is also why she's tied to that element. Are there any other correspondences that I forgot? I think in the study guide, I put a lot in there. Let me double check. Okay, so yes, here. So in the study guide too, I also put offerings that you can put at your altar. So some of that includes food substances and other things like that. So you can have floral tea, honey. She really loves honey. Floral crowns. I make her one in both autumn and spring. In autumn, I make sure there's leaves included. I also make sure there's like, sounds weird, but I always make sure there's like death, like decaying leaves in there so that I can represent both sides of her duality. She likes sweet fruits, crowns, because she's a queen. So if and she takes that role seriously. She takes a lot of pride in being queen of the underworld. So representing that would be super fun, super important to her. Anything that has to do with death, poetry, seeds, any of her images, statues, things like that. Ways that you can honor her um outside of doing like actual work with her, actual energy work, actually calling her in and things. Shadow work. She is amazing for shadow work. I do have some shadow work prompts. When I am introducing you to her, I will walk through a couple with you. But she is absolutely fantastic for shadow work. What she can pull out for you is it's amazing. I'll talk about that a little bit more when I talk about how I work with her and my personal experience with her. Other things that you can do with her, obviously, working with herbs, plants, herbalism, anything like that. Going on nature walks, celebrating her in both times of the year. I feel like way too many people focus on her really in the spring and they forget about her maiden. They forget how important she is. Like she is literally the reason the earth is dying. Like she is literally the reason that you are like, she is literally the reason why the earth is going into hibernation. She is the reason why all of your plants are dying. She is the reason why all that is happening. She's the reason why Demeter is grieving. She's so like I feel like a lot of people forget about her then and they really only focus her on springtime when everything's coming back. So really making sure you focus on her during both of those times. You can use her to help with honoring the dead. Even if you go to a graveyard, there's sometimes where I literally just walking through there, like she's so present there. You can even work with her by honoring Hades, because like I said, they have a pretty strong connection. She also still has a very strong connection to her mother. So honoring Demeter is also another way that you can do a devotional act to her. You can create an altar to her. There are a lot of other things. I have a lot of different ways for you in the study guide for you to look at. And then so next I will kind of go over my kind of journey with her, kind of how I actually hold on. I'm gonna do one other thing. So she kind of had some really strong powers, unique ones. Like I said before, she was Hades gave her an equal seat next. They had equal power. They ruled that realm equally. And so she had the ability to actually like judge the dead and decide their fates. There's not many goddesses that get that. They don't get that. So that's a pretty powerful power to have. And then she had a lot of servants, both dead and living, that were at her disposal to be able to use. She specifically ruled over flowers. my email. So I did put this study guide in. Hold on, I'm looking at the chat. I did put the study guide in here, so I can recopy it and put it down here for you if you missed it. Otherwise, yes, you can send me your email. I can do. But yes, you can send me your email. I can do that too. Okay. So what was I at? I'm so sorry, guys. This chat distracted me. Um. Okay, flowers specifically. So goddess of spring, yes, but specifically flowers themselves. It was taught that like she could literally make them bloom and fall whenever she wanted. Also, she had the ability to turn the seasons as will. Some people claim that she had. I don't know 100% about that one. I'm going to share word versions of the study guide. Yes, I can do that. I was originally doing Word versions and then I was asked for PDFs. So I can do both. That is no one problem. I do not. In screen. Okay. Yeah, I can do that. I have no problem doing that. Okay, so outside of her powers though, it's pretty much deity powers. She's awesome. She's amazing. There's nothing really more specific to that with her that we have written text of. The flowers and being able to facilitate with those in the realm, their passage going to and from, the ability to judge the dead and decide their fates. She had a lot of power to sway over Hades himself, which I mean, in my mind, that's a lot of power. So that was part of it as well. The way that she'll usually appear to people, obviously every deity can appear to anybody in any shape or form, in any visual that they would want. And one deity is going to present to me in one way, and they're going to present to you in a different way. But a typical image that you'll usually see is her depicted as a young woman, but she can appear in many forms. She's shown as a beautiful, beautiful young maiden with fair skin. Usually, she has darker flowing hair. She epitomizes beauty. She usually has like a crown of flowers around her skull or waist long, like, and her hair is usually like waist length. It's like really long. I don't always see her with a crown of flowers personally. Usually, her crown is a lot more underworldy for me. It's a lot more dark. It's a lot power with like flowers mixed into it, but it's more throughout metalwork for me. But a lot of people do see her with just a floral crown on top of her head. Um, and so it kind of depends. If she does appear to you in more of a darker sense, usually she has a robe on that's really flowing and a darker color. Sometimes purple will pop up, usually red or black for me, but other people that have seen purple, and from what I've gathered from other people, that image is a lot harder to come across. I personally feel it's because people don't approach her from a sense of duality as much as they should, and they don't approach her from a sense of a dark goddess. They approach her more as a goddess of spring. So it makes more sense for her to approach you in more of a young, beautiful woman with a flowery crown vibe if you are approaching her more as the goddess of spring. But like I said, I approach her as a dark goddess, so she does come to me in that form and in that sense. Um, let's see. Sure. I've covered everything I want to before I actually talk about my experience with her in a lot more detail. So how her myths and energies can apply to you. She's relevant in so many ways. In so many ways. And she looks really different in different ways as well. Duality. She is all about duality, and duality resides in all of us. I'm actually going to be doing a whole separate thing on shadow work and duality because duality is such an important concept. I personally believe that that's where we all need to be. I personally don't believe in the love and light only type of path. So duality is super huge for me personally as well, on top of that. But we all have it. We all have it, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. We all have duality. We all have a light side. We all have a dark side. We all have two sides of us, yin, yang, masculine, feminine, however the verbiage is that you want to attach to it. And she is all about duality. I mean, she's the goddess of spring. I'm the queen of the underworld. I don't know how much more dual you can get than that, or how much more opposites you can get to that than that. Um, Also, the concept of duality also ties into where she is like perpetually being torn between two different sides and two different people. And she was put into this not by her choice, but she's still, like I said, she rises and she takes power and she takes it and she makes it her own. But like she's perpetually being torn from two different sides. Hades wants her with him all the time. Her mother wants her with her all the time. So like she's constantly being torn and pulled and tugged on these two different sides by these two very powerful deities, two very powerful beings. So that is also where the concept of duality really ties into her as well. Um, and then you also have to look at it as too, is like that concept also comes into herself, the duality of that concept herself. Where does my loyalty lie more? Does it lie more to my spouse and my husband? Does it lie more to my mother? I want to have relationships with them both. They're both. So like, what do I do? So that's the other part of duality that kind of like ties into her. Um, her story can also really remind us to like not lose ourselves in trying to please absolutely everybody around us and being controlled by everybody else around us. That's how her story began. Like I said, she had no choice in this arrangement she was put into. This was decided for her by all these other adults around her. And then she took it, she owned it. She turned the underworld into what she needed it to be, what she saw it to be. I mean, she became an equal next to Hades. And so that is another reason, another thing that I can tell you is like stop people pleasing everybody around you to be able to come into your own power. Stop doing what everybody else wants you to do. Um, let's see. And then another thing that she can really teach and show for you is also how to stand up for yourself within your own boundaries. I get that from her and I get that feel from her again. Like she made herself an equal within Hades' realms. Yes, what we have from the stories, she started kicking and screaming and crying and wailing was the words that was used. She was wailing and lamenting for her mother. And then a relationship developed. Um, I'm going to briefly touch on that actually right now. Um, because the reason why is we do have some stories about Hades, and when you look at Hades, this is like really his only
Something with
indiscretion you can really
and I was
find.
like, what is that?
It's
Isn't that like a cassette player? And he's like, it is not like a cassette player. So then he went through so many different ways of trying to explain it to me. He was like, okay, you know how a cassette works? And I'm like, I do not know how a cassette works. And he's like, all right.
okay. So I think that okay, okay, so he like this is really the only indiscretion you can really find of him is his kidnapping of Persephone. Like you don't really find a lot of other areas where he's really super. There's one other story, but he's actually like a fairly like kind god. Like he stays fairly loyal to Persephone. Like you don't really read of him committing infidelities, things like that. And so from my understanding, from a couple of texts, I believe this is mainly found in the Chaldean version of it. Yeah, the Chaldean version of it. Is to where Hades went to her and was like, because this was fated, this was going to happen no matter what. This was a prophecy. Like, this is going to happen no matter what. You are here under circumstances. You're here under your will. You don't want to be here. I'm still going to try to do my best to do right by you. I'm still going to try my best to be faithful to you. I'm still going to do my best to try to build this into a relationship. And that is how I view that story. That is the energy that comes across to me with her. Yes, it started off really Stockholmy, very rapey, very traumatic, but then it was reset in a way and then came forward from there. You can choose, like I said, you can choose not to get that vibe, not to get that energy. She may not come across that way to you. She doesn't for everybody. But that is kind of part of it and where that can come up. Like I said, that is in the Chaldean stories. There is a verse in there about that, about her, about him explaining to her, like, this was fated, this was a prophecy. We both have no choice of being a part of this, but I'm going to do my best to try to do right by you. So that is something as well, that her energy can help for you, can do for you, is that concept of like overcoming like toxic relationships, the possibility of forgiveness, the possibility of turning them into something else. back these days, kidnapping was very common. Yes, super common way to get a bride. You were either kidnapped or literally just given away. Super common way to get a bride. Historically, yes, that is incredibly accurate. Let's see. Another way that she can help you and the energy can help you, I already kind of like her shadow self. I mean, she really had to fully envelop that. She really had to fully encompass that to become queen of the underworld. So to really, really look at that, I'll kind of explain to you how she does that. She's different than Lila. She's not quite so abrasive, but she can completely turn your world completely upside down. That is definitely something that she can do. Another thing that she can help and bring back forth to you, and also kind of ties into the concept of duality, is she can help bring back like your childlike wonder and your innocence. Because she is the goddess of spring. So that concept and that duality of her is there. There are so many versions of the story where she is just this naive young woman of like on the age of initiation, and her mom like super overprotective, super sheltered, so like that, and like she was frolicking in the like field of flowers with Artemis and Athena. So like she does give you that ability to really like tap into and work through like that childlike energy again. Um, and then the huge energy is the energy of transition and transformation. Um, for one, she massively represents the idea of transition, just with the idea of, like I said, they were very specific that she was at the age to be initiated, and then she was wed to Hades, which, she was raped, so that transition of you are no longer a virgin, you are no longer a child, you are no longer a maiden, you are no longer a young woman, and now you are abruptly a woman. You are now in that womanhood. You are now in that transitional, you are past that transition. So, and also if you did, fun tidbit, she actually pretty much didn't have a name until she was married to Hades. Like she really wasn't known as Persephone. She was known as Flor or Kore, which typically
The
literally just
story of
means
Persephone
young woman at the age of being
with Dark
initiated.
Goddess of Autumn. So she's just telling that.
Who is not muted? Somebody not. Okay, so her name, traditionally, like I said, just Kore. Like she didn't really have her own identity or name. She really wasn't known to or referred to as Persephone until after that wedding to Hades, until after she was given to Hades, until after she became Hades' bride, and then she was known as Persephone. That's when her name really got given to her because she went through that transition. Her identity was created. She became what was expected of her as a woman who was wed. That was her duty. I mean, back in those times, that was what it was expected. And then, okay, so there's that. Oh, I apologize. Sometimes there's so much with her. Does anybody have any questions while I make sure that I take a peek that I've covered everything? Any questions at all? Anything that you're feeling coming through for her right now?
Yes, in the study guide, you have a lot of helpful information, about how to honor her and, make an altar. Right before class started, like you just called her, like
Yes.
on your own. Like, did you do all that ahead of time, or you just work with her so much she's just sort of close by?
So, technically the answer is both. I do work with her so much that I do, as long as I keep that open and I don't intentionally close it, I do feel a presence with her and connection to her all the time. But specifically for today, I did do an invocation to call her in to be very strongly with me today. Can she be working? Yes. Okay. I'm gonna look at the chat in a second. Not getting distracted. But yes, I did specifically do an invocation to call her in. So I casted a circle. I did everything that I specifically do for deity work at my altar to call her in to make sure her energy was specifically here. And then the smaller invocation that I did when I cast the circle with you guys was just to allow you guys to enter my energy field so that you can start to feel the beginning of her energy. And then once we're done with all of this, if you're comfortable with it, I will actually do a full invocation of her for her to possibly represent her, show herself to. So when you work with her, you do have to kind of like work your way up. You can definitely Because like I put in the study guide, before you do any type of like personal invocations or anything like that, you want to make sure that you fully understand the deity, you fully respect the deity, you know the information about the deity, and that the deity is open to working with. And then once you do that, then you're going to be able to call them in. Whether you have to do a full circle invocation, it depends on the amount of energy and what you're looking at to use them, what you're asking them to help you with. Because I don't go to deities as asked as like for them to do things for me. I go to them for assistance and for energy. Does that answer your question or not at all?
Yes, so I mean, big picture, yes, you need to do all that on your own before you ever invoke them. So
Big
yes.
picture, yes. For your own safety, yes. If I though also feel that it is safe for them, for you, if somebody has experience with them, like I do, and is willing to open themselves up to allow you to feel their energy by them channeling them or them calling them and them evoking them, I feel it's perfectly safe to do that without all that extra background, as long as you're coming to it from a place of reverence and respect. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I'm used to, non-deities invoking spirit just by opening myself up to it. So I just didn't know if you can do this the same way, but
You can, but you have to have given the right respect and know enough about the deity to do that.
okay.
So you can do exactly what you would do for like spirit guides or anything like that, but you need to make sure that you have the respect and the reverence for that deity and you know about that deity, because way too many times people will just call a deity's name and they don't know anything about that deity at all. They don't know the energy that's coming in. They don't know what's going to offend that deity. They don't know what that deity is asking. And then that's when the problem comes in. So as long as you have the knowledge and information about the deity, you will eventually be able to just open up and call them like spirits and spirit guides. When I do the invocation, that's just to make it a much stronger presentation. And that's also to make sure that energy can possibly be felt by others.
I mean, how much is enough? I mean, like, your study guides are wonderful, like, would the deity expect you to do much further research before you ever try to connect?
That's going to be a personal opinion. But I'm going to say I do give you a lot of information. I'm going to say that what I would prefer that people do is if you choose to go and start working with these deities and invoke them, I would prefer that before you go and invoke them yourself or try to call them in, that you at least spend like a week doing shadow work specifically for that deity's energy that you're going to be working with. And that you work for like at least a week of really meditating, really focusing on the energy, really being intentional of that energy and that deity that you're going to call into. So you're very aware of what you're going to be entering and what is going to be coming into you. And that shadow work will also help you be able to be in that space to be able to accept and receive the messages that that deity is going to be portraying to you. If you're not willing and open to those messages, and if you're not prepared for them, I mean, I kind of feel personally it's kind of a waste of time because you're not going to be able to receive them if you're not first open and ready to receive. Does that help more at all?
Yeah, not the answer I wanted, but yeah.
I know. I like to make sure like you have so much respect and reverence for them before like you really get there. And I want to make sure you fully know your energy before you really try to work with them.
Yeah, I guess, I think it's possible to be respectful and open and accepting without a week long of, because we're all so short on time and everything we have, all the different directions we're all pulled into. So
Definitely heal that, and I definitely totally agree with that. But when I look at it that way, like I get that time can be restricting, but you don't want to go into a deity not knowing about them because you, like I said, you could say something that's going to offend them. You could bring in something, your energy could not be what they're looking for. You could offer something to them that's going to offend them, that's going to make them upset. Deities are, they are entities, they are beings, they have feelings, they have expectations, they have things like that. And I guess it's almost like trying to go to another country and another culture and not learning anything about it prior. You can't really show it the absolute full respect that you should be if you don't have knowledge of the culture and things that you're experiencing. You may be able to show it an amount of respect, but the amount of respect that's needed to be able to have them to be willing to come and guide you, I feel like is just needed a lot more. Does that help make it a little bit?
Yeah, no, I appreciate your guidance on that. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, let's see in the chat. I've just been getting waves of energy and a lot at once, giving a slight headache. I'm gonna see this headache. Water will help with the headache too. Trust me, I'm about to take my sip of liquid that I need here. Can she be worked with for divination? Yes, Paul. I use her in tarot a lot. Also mirror scrying. I've heard other people use her with pendulums as well. I haven't had much success with that. But I use her with mirror scrying a lot and tarot. She pops up in tarot a lot, for me and for divination that way. So, any other questions before I kind of go into a little bit more of like how she has presented with me, how I've worked with her, how her energy. Sorry, I just love her so much. I get so much admiration for her. I have so much reverence for her. Like I said, I've been working with her for 15 years. I love her so much. So any other questions at all before I go into that? I am going to take that as a no. So I wrote it, I did write it out. I wrote it out in the guide, kind of a little bit more detailed, of how I kind of met her, how to work with her, how her energy works. But right now, I'll kind of yes, she's a lot of energy, so I'm not surprised you got tired. Persephone is a lot of energy. When I was introduced to her, it was kind of overwhelming at first. She's like, a lot of you are saying she's a lot of energy, because she is so duality and because she holds so much power in the underworld and because of the amount of trauma that revolves her story and even just her parentage, she has so much power that's within her, like as a right. I was very thrown back by her when I first met her. Some people say that she presents very subtly at first, that she will very subtly hope, 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 and she'll give you very small hints. Like somebody said earlier that they were seeing bats in the yard before and you've never seen bats before. I would pay attention to that. She will give you very subtle hints. She's very like nonchalant about it. She's not very abrasive like Lilith is until you don't get those subtle hints and until you don't listen to her. And then she will literally turn your world completely upside down, especially if there's a part of your life and your world that she feels is ill. She doesn't like that. She really, really can't stand that. She's a deity that is very, very, very full of truth. For me, I feel like that really comes from the concept of duality. Duality for me, that very, very, that's much more rooted in truth than love and light for me. So that's a whole other thing. But so she really turned my world upside down. She came to me, she rocked me off my feet. When she first manifested to me, I actually kind of fell on my knees, because she just really ripped me open and let me know that there are two sides of you, and it is fabulous, and it is totally okay to feel both of them. And you have a lot of trauma in your past that you need to overcome, but that trauma and that darkness is going to end up evolving into this unbelievable power that you will never ever begin to even comprehend right now, and you're going to become an equal among people who you would never even imagine being next to. She literally just like dropped right in my face. Like she was very, very like, you need to like shaking me awake to let me know. Like she really ripped me open. So that she may present to you that way if you have not been paying attention to those subtle signs. If you're just starting to get subtle signs, you can go into it a lot more gently. She will kind of hold your hand a little bit more. If you're not, like she, like I said, there are stories of her rage with Adonis. Like she got mad, like she got angry. Because she presented herself to me in that way and really ripped my world open and really came at me that way. I do have a connection to her that, like I said, I consider her a dark goddess. I acknowledge her as a goddess of the spring because that's her duality side, but I really focus more on the dark goddess side. So like I said, because she did come at me that way and very, very ripping my heart open, I really did shadow work with her for a really long time. I didn't invoke her after that. I didn't call her. I didn't do any of that besides putting things on my altar with her and really focusing on shadow work and feeling her energy wrapping around me and really pulling at the parts that need to be pulled. And that's something that she'll do for you is she will literally sit there and she will pick at this little part that needs to be picked at and she will pull it open and she will show you both sides of it. She will show you the spring goddess version of it and she will show you the queen of the underworld version. And she will teach you that that synthesis needs to happen in order for you to fully overcome it and for you to get to your cat abyss version of your story, for you to fully emerge from the absolute darkness, to be completely transformed and to be completely changed. You have to experience some type of death to do that. And so that's also why she presented to me and presents to some people in a very, very, I'm going to rip your world apart kind of way, because she's going to make you go through that death that you need to go through of your previous self so that you can go through that evolution to change and transform to that next evolved version of yourself that you are reaching that is in harmony with complete duality. That is something that I worked on really hard with her throughout shadow work. Like I said, it was probably for about a year before I even went back into trying to evoke her, trying to call her, trying to do anything like that with her. Like I mentioned earlier, when I do evoke her, when I do use her, when I do work with her, tarot is something that I've used, scrying, in mirrors, even in black mirrors. What is the difference between invoking and like meditating and allowing her energy to surround you? Okay. So how I kind of see it, invoking is like getting her actual presence, like getting her to actually presently be with you. It's not just the energy, it's like the deity is almost physically there with you. So you guys are feeling a part of the energy coming through me right now, through my energetic container. I feel her literally standing right behind me. Like right now, she's literally touching my shoulder. So like that is like to me the difference between like the invoking and evoking. To me, the evoking is more of like the energetic field. It's more of that archetype energy, whereas the invoking is personally getting in touch with that specific deity. That is that deity literally personally representing themselves. Does that make sense? And it's not a dumb question. It's something that a lot of people, I mean, I think it took me a little bit to understand the difference. Okay, where was I at with what I was doing with her? Okay, then I started adding her to my altar. When I did that, she did start to present herself more often, without me even asking. She started showing up without me even evoking her, especially when I was working on shadow work or even therapy or doing things like that. So I would follow that energy, I would follow that string, I would follow that tangent, and I would listen to her. And she's, like I said, she's walked me through a lot of struggles. When it comes to trauma, I've been through an immense amount. I can actually fill out everything on a trauma-informed take sheet. So she's helped me through a lot. She's very, very good with that and very good at like ripping that open to be able to find the duality sides of it and to help with the radical acceptance and let go of the concept of should and shouldn't. Those are concepts that are going to be very damaging for you. You have to let go of those. Because that's something she really had to let go of. Like, yes, it shouldn't have happened that she was kidnapped and raped, and but it did. It happened. So now what are we going to do about it? How are we going to accept it? How are we going to take that power? How are we going to mold it? How are we going to become our own sovereign being in doing that? And that's something that she really brings forward for you, and she can really, really help you with. That's something she did really personally for me. After I worked through that, I started to really look at this mythology between her and Hades, and this story and how that relationship worked and how that things like the reason why I did that is because Hades personally started pulling at me, and I needed to kind of figure out why. I personally, through my work with her, through reading different texts, including the retellings, because I think the retellings are just as important as ancient texts. If something is coming up as a common theme throughout society, across many cultures, it's important. Doesn't matter what time it's in. If it's a super common theme, it's important. It matters. And the energies of deities can change throughout millennia. I mean, we see it throughout the ancient writings. They change. So the way that she presented to me and explained to me that relationship is kind of how I've been talking about it through the whole thing. It did start out that way. It started out very non-consensual, rape, non like kidnapped, all of that, very non-consensual. But he did present himself in a way to where he was like, you know what? This was told to me that this was fated. There was nothing about it. It was a prophecy. You know, we went about this the way we did to try not to upset your mother, and that didn't work. And I want to come at you, and I want to do right by you. And Persephone like really took that in, and like she really tried, like she really overcame that. She really did that work to go through that healing, go through that darkness to try to develop that relationship. And that's how she ended up having so much power. That's how she ended up becoming an equal, is because she actually really truly did work through that. And she has a very devoted, loving, beloved relationship with Hades. And I really wanted to make sure to mention this because not everybody feels that way about it. Not everybody gets that connection. That is something that she is in for the last 13 years since we've worked on this part of her journey and message. This is something she's made very clear to me is like she does not want her beloved disrespected. She does not want him misconstrued. She wants him included in her service, in her altars, in her practice, all of that because they are equals, because they rule that realm as equals, and because that is so rare, she doesn't want that offense to be added to that. I personally include Hades in some way, shape, or form in everything I do with her right now, with everything that I have going on with her. His smoky quartz is there, his sigil is there, his candle is there. Like I make sure that he is next to her. She is still prominent, she is still center. That is the energy that I am evoking and calling, but I also make sure to honor that connection. They have such a deep bond. It is fabulous. I use them a lot when it comes to relationship work. I use them a lot when it comes to like marriage, relationship work, things like that. And if you look across cultures, even a lot of times when people are celebrating, even just Halloween, you'll see things, the ceremony and wedding of Hades and Persephone. Like she was symbolized in history. They used her kidnapping and they used her union with Hades to start to symbolize weddings, to symbolize what that meant. So like her relationship to Hades is actually super, super important. It's not just some like creepy relationship that should be written off. I mean, even like in Athens, if young women died and it was before they were married and they were close to initiation age, they were usually buried in wedding garments and they were given offerings to Persephone and Hades for their wedding, because a wedding was also seen as a death. Like it's a death of the Virgo, it's a death of the virgin, it's a death of the maiden, and then you're becoming a woman. You're taking on a new name, you're becoming a new role, you're becoming a new identity. So it's also a death and a birth, which is then the reality of that as well. So that's why I feel like it's so important to take a look and work on that relationship with them. And that's why I took the time to do that after I started really getting close with her. And once I did that, I really got a full sense of who she was and her identity. I was able to really fully comprehend her duality in another way because she's so loving to this man that did something so awful to her. She really transformed and came over that. And so that's another reason why, like, again, like, I think that's so important and to like grasp onto that. But again, like I said, not everybody subscribes to that version of her story because there are versions to where, you know, they don't quite get along. I don't see very many of them, to be honest. Most of them, they do get along. In almost every single story, she's seen as an equal. She has enough power as him, all of that. So that's, again, with that. When it comes to my work with her now, how it has evolved now. I invoke her almost every single day. She is with me almost every single day. I use her with meditate. I use her archetype energy when it comes to meditation for shadow work. I use her specifically for shadow work. I use her for divination with tarot. I use her for divination with mirror scrying. I use her also because of her association with Hades and because of her being a dark goddess. I use her with sex and love and ritual spells. I use her for transformation. I use her for, since she is a goddess of spring, I do have a representation of her by my garden and my fairy garden as well, because there's actually some ties to her in the Fae as well. That's a whole actually. And then my connection to her, like I said, it's pretty strong. You can feel it now. And I do, like I said, I do all of that stuff with her. I evoke her. I do prayers with her all the time. Mabon, that was just here in the fall equinox. She had a whole entire day dedicated to her of ceremonies and rites and rituals that I did, to help with the harvest and the turning of the seasons and honoring that part of her and honoring her returning to her beloved Hades. Because I feel that's so important. She needs to go back to him. I don't feel like she's super bummed out to go back down. That's not the vibe that I get from her. That's not the energy that I get from her. That's not what she presents to me. It presents to me that she's very excited to go down there, but it also presents to me that she's very excited when she gets to come up to her mother as well. It's the duality of the fact that like both of those relationships are very important. I think that's kind of everything that I can think of right now. Does anybody have any questions about my personal connection with her, how I work with her, what I do with her? Because if you don't, then we're at the point to where I can do a specific invocation for her and walk you guys through some shadow prompts while I'm doing that to try to let you meet her. Computer screen again. Why does it keep doing this? Okay, guys, I'm sorry. Technical difficulties. I think my screen just keeps falling asleep and then not wanting to wake up. Okay, here's the thing. Let's do it. Let's do it. Getting no questions? Can everybody still hear me? Can I get a thumbs up that you guys can still hear me? Because it muted me for a second and then put me back on. Okay, fabulous. Okay, so I don't see any questions at all. So if you are not comfortable with having a deity invoked, if you are not comfortable with that energy being near you, if it's not something you're ready for, I am not going to be offended at all. If you decide to jump ship right now, I'm totally fine with that. If you are okay with it, then you can totally stay. And like I said, I will invoke her after again I drop back into my container, and then I will walk you through some shadow prompts that will help you kind of start to think of that energy and how to meet her and how to work with her. So then you can eventually choose to invoke her on your own if you would like to. Please, goddess, the original fury, lady, and queen of the underworld, who holds death like a kiss, steered the chariot and galloped into the darkness. You're also goddess of spring, bringer of seasons and life. She who rules the underworld with an iron fist, but also compassion, and is the cherished wife of Hades. She whose name means destroyer, the queen destroyer of all. Fair one with hair that flows like ripened rain and eyes that catch clear blue sky. Smile sweet yet shadowy. A light-footed one who also loves to dance in the flowered fields and walk through the embers of heaven. Persephone, lovely one who knows the feel of sun and on your skin, and who also knows the dark of the underworld. Who knows the feel of cold stone against warm flesh in the world of the living and in the world of the dead. No maiden is so alive as you, so dead. In the world of the dead, Persephone, you reign as queen on an iron throne, honored above all else, equal alongside him. You're a goddess and a child of earth, powerful in your own right, by patronage of your deities. Bride of the darkness, you're a goddess of duality on both sides, and your best friend, Hecate, is queen of witches. I honor you, and I call you forth. I ask everybody to be open and receiving how she chooses to present to you. Whether you see her image, whether you see a symbol that represents her, whether you hear her voice, or you simply just feel her. Her image may present to you in a couple of different ways. She may look like a goddess of spring. She may look like the queen of the underworld. She may look like a terrified, naive girl. She may look like a traumatically, sensually, non-consensually raped bride. She may come to you in all forms. Now I just ask that you sit. You draw forth whatever image and how she chooses to. How is she presenting to you? She's showing you your lighter, more childlike side. She's showing you your darker side. That is quenching, full of thirst. What is she trying to say to you? Is she trying to tell you through feelings of energy? Is she trying to tell you through symbols? Is she speaking to you? What must you acknowledge that you're unable to change in your life? She's going to want to show you that. Whether it be subtle, abrasive, what must you acknowledge that you're unable to change in your life? How can you take back your power in your life again, despite everything you can't change? There are things you simply cannot change. They simply just are. Whether they're fated or they've already happened, you can't change them. You can't change who your parents are. You can't change who your siblings are. How can I take back my power in my life again, despite what I cannot change? That's Persephone again. She's there for you in form. She's not there in form. Look around you. Notice what's around you. Any symbols. Anything that's very clearly drawing your attention. Whether it be a sound, or a visual, or a feeling. Now ask her to tell you, how can I use the challenges in my life to my advantage? She will show you. How can I use the challenges in my life to my advantage? Ask her what she has to say to you. Be willing to receive it, no matter how painful the answer is, no matter how abrasive, no matter if it doesn't make sense to you right now. How can I use the challenges in my life to my advantage? Ask her, how can I make the most of what is happening in my life right now? Ask her to let you know from both sides of the perspective, whether it be the light, the dark, whether it be the trauma you're dealing with, whether it be your celebrations, things that you're grateful for. How can I make the most out of everything that's happening in my life? Or again, if she's there for you in form. Otherwise, look around your space and notice if there's anything that's drawing your attention. Whether it be a symbol or a color, or a feeling or a sound. Ask her, what parts of myself have I been unwilling to look at, see, and am ignoring? On both parts of this. What have I been unwilling to look at, to see, to change, to acknowledge? What is it that you need to show? Now, if she's showing up to you in form, look at her again. Remember every detail of the image you're seeing. If she's not showing up to you in form, look around your space. Notice anything that's been consistently sticking out to you. Notice any sounds that have been consistently sticking out to you. The energy that you feel. Hang on to it. Remember it. Know what these things feel like, sound like, look like. Keep it in a pocket and a place within your sacred containers. So call on when you need to. Now I ask, in whatever way you feel appropriate and is calling to you, please show her some type of respect or reverence or act of gratitude and thankfulness for her showing herself to you and being willing to have this conversation. If you're going to see her again, let her know. As we sit here, thank her. So incredibly grateful for what she came to show us, how she came across, in whatever form, shape, or way she did. This is the first time you're meeting her, being grateful for being able to say hello. And as we do this, I personally thank her. I let her know that I will be seeing her again very soon. I am now going to call to close and release her away. She can leave if she'd like, she can stay if she wants, but I will no longer be holding that continuing space. Call back all the corners, the guides, the shadows to completely close our circle. I call back the guardians of the south, the guardians and gatekeepers of the north, and the guardians and gatekeepers of the east. I call back everybody's energy within this circle. I call back all the spirit guides, the ancestors, ascended masters, deities, dimensional beings from other planes, other universes, those above and those below. I release you and I thank you for all of your protection, guidance, and your ability, and honestly, your willingness to even be here with us. I call to release you back to wherever you'd like to go. Okay. Ooh. She came through very strong for a few of you. If you didn't feel her, I'm gonna let you know. There's some of you where you definitely saw her in person. If anybody wants to share what happened and you feel comfortable doing that, you certainly can now. If you don't want to, that's perfectly fine. Like, this is a super, super personal thing, and I don't expect anybody to be willing to share that if they don't want to. If you do, now is the time that I'll let you guys do that. Thank you. I felt lots of, yay, I'm glad that you felt lots of extra. Be happy. So I will give you guys some time to like share, and if you guys end up knowing wants to, and then it's silent, then we'll be done from there. I felt immense heat. That makes a lot of sense. That happens a lot of time with me, especially if she's got a lot that she's really trying to show me and I'm really not paying attention. It's almost like you feel like the flames of the underworld. And that's like really that comes through for you. If you can't tell, like I'm really flushed because she gives a lot of intense heat and energy that comes with her. She's showing a dark destroyer queen with wings. Just wings on wings with a dark crown with flowers and metals, and she was strong. She stood in her own power and challenged me to use. I I absolutely love this. This is very similar to how she presents to me. Can you tell who she came? I have ideas of who she came to, but I also don't want to tell you because I want that to be something in a journey that you experience on your own. If she's calling to you and you aren't quite sure, that's why I want you to look into her, do the shadow work, and call out to her again to see if what you felt was true. I think I need a nap. Yes, I agree. Honey, you're raising your hand. You can go ahead.
I just didn't want to interrupt.
I know, I get distracted by the chat, so thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. That was great. Uh, I I seen her in like a giant cave in the underworld. She's like on her throne, and I got a lot of detail. She was in like a dark robe. It was like purplish black with red furry trim and like a light blue slip gown underneath. She had metal crown with like the base was a normal crown, flat-ish, and then on top was like metal rose vines with colorful flowers and skulls all on it. I was kneeling with my head uh, bound, bowed, in front of her. She was huge, like a giant. And before I could say anything, she said, "You're not ready." And which I could already feel that. I already knew that before we even went into this part. And then I told her I know, and she came down and she pulled my head up and said the same thing. "You're not ready yet, but you will be, and I want you to come see me then." She uh, looked me in the eye and she said, "You have more power in you than you believe. Show it, and you'll be ready." And I bowed my head again and said, "Thank you for that," as a sign of respect. And then when I looked up, she was gone. Her throne was there, but she wasn't. And then I was in the middle of a field of white and yellow flowers. I think they were daisies, and it just felt very calm. And then I just kind of flipped around and laid down on the grass. It was really nice. So I missed like the first half of your prompts, the shadow prompts. um, but then like the second to last one, I caught what you see around you, and and I have a window in front of me, and that was like the main thing I saw was just like the grass outside. Like I want to be outside now.
Oh my God, that is so beautiful. She came through for you so strongly. I am so happy she did. And to be honest, what you're describing is a lot of how she first originally presented to me and like how I still kind of view her and how I see her when we meet and it's not in my space but in her space. I love it. I love it so much. And I really, really, really hope that you continue to do the work so that you can go back to her. I really, really hope you do. And that also is kind of like her duality showing to you because she came through superimposing, but then she gave you all that compassion and that empathy and was like very gentle with you. So, oh, I love it. I love it. I love it.
Thanks.
See, got one message here. Can I ask why Lord Zeus popped in partway? Is that normal? So I've had him pop in a couple times when I've worked with her just because Zeus is a button. That's just he's her father. He'll pop in because he's her father, and he feels like he has a right to do this. So, I wasn't specifically calling to him, but I would really look into Zeus because if he's showing up with her, I'm wondering if that has to do with a father wound for you. We all have mother wounds and father wounds we have to work through in shadow work. So I'm really wondering if that's why he's popping up for you. The only time that he's popped up for me with her is when I've been specifically working on trauma that has to deal with my father. So that I would really look into that. She called to me repeatedly. She called me little bat. Yes, she likes that word. She has used that with me often. Lily uses that term too as an interment. I saw her as a young girl in the white flowery dress with a floral headdress and felt her energy primarily wrapping around. Ooh, I love that. Wrapping around the back of your head. She comes to me in that young girl form in the white flowery dress sometimes too. The innocence and that childlike feeling and like wanting to bring that out in you, and I love that. I saw her as a teen. She had a crown and was playing with butterflies. Dark hand, light skin. Yeah, that's super common. That is super, super common with her. I don't really find other people seeing her in any other shape or form besides the light skin and the dark hair. So that's super, super common. And I love that it's common that other people are seeing that. Okay. Any other questions? Any other things that you guys want to tell me about what you thought and felt today? Anything at all about that? I didn't get an exact image, but the heat. I felt localized into an area of my body. Okay, waiting for your. Oh, I'm so sorry you're in a lot of pain. And when you close out, pain disappears. I love that. I haven't used her to heal physically like that. So I'm actually going to look into that more for you because that's really interesting. And I really, really love that. Is she commonly represented by light skin, dark hair, bright eyes? Yes, that is the typical representation I see of her. I really don't ever see her represented anyway. Even like on the temple that's dedicated to like Demeter and she's in the images there, like on the side of the temple, like she's got the long flowing hair. I've never seen really an image of her when it comes to like her having any other. If that means that's correct, I don't know. She's never come to me in any other way. But I just heard flowers and forgiveness. I love that. Forgiveness is a thing that she can really, really help with. Duality and forgiveness are super tied together, and super tied into the concept of radical acceptance and not living in the should and shouldn't world. So I absolutely love that she came through like that for you. And the flowers, because she loves flowers. I feel emotional because of it. Um, I want to say I'm glad that you're feeling emotional because that is what this is. That is really what she's for. That's what she's really to help you for. And crying's not a bad thing. I know some of us think it is, but it's not. And I really want you, like, if it feels like a cathartic, therapeutic cry, I really want you to do it. She would be so happy for you to do that because that's a release for her. And that's her helping you release some type of trauma. That's her helping you work through some type of like emergence. And she would absolutely love that. If it's something you don't want to do, that's totally fine too. It's everybody's own path. You can do things however you would like to. Okay, any other questions? I missed the first half of the lessons today because I didn't see the time. Yeah, so I'm really sorry. The recording's gonna be on YouTube. I'll probably let you know when Alex puts this on there, and then I'm gonna double check all of the events. So it's gonna be like every Sunday from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. I think what's happening is we have two different pages, and one page is putting it in my time zone, and another page is putting it in the mountain time zone, which is why sometimes they're coming up as two times. So I'm super, super sorry. That's been brought to my attention now today, like 3 times. So tonight I'm gonna go through it, make sure they're all even and that I have it all together because I'm in Central Time. So, and pretty much nobody's in Central Time. I'm coming to learn. That's not a common time zone people use. So I will get better at making sure that they convert right. Oh, honey, you're in Central. Awesome. I love it. Yay. It's another reason why I feel like we have that connection. Intense smell of iris and victim. Iris is super common. I use that in incense a lot with her. She loves incense. Sandalwood seems to be super common with her. She likes Paleo Santos too, and then black cherry. She really loves black cherry incense. I use that a lot with her. And visions from my childhood. She will do that to you, Paul. Like I said, she really likes to rip things open and slam them in your face if you're not paying attention. She was very helpful for me going through childhood trauma. I invoked her often doing prolonged trauma exposure therapy. I used her a lot. She was in the room a lot. Especially because the ending of her childhood ended so traumatically. And her transition was so traumatic and so abrupt. Any other questions or comments at all? You are so welcome. I love giving my energy. And just a reminder, my energy automatically purifies. That is just something that I do. There is not anything else that I can, I can't shut that part off. So you will continue to feel that for a couple hours. I will continue to end up purifying things out. It's just naturally what my energy does. So just enjoy that. And then thank you guys so much for being here with me. I'm super passionate about the dark goddesses. I will continue to teach you about them. I really, really want people to learn about them, learn how to use them, and learn how they can help your life. Like I said, I'm a super duality witch. I think it's so important to look at the dark side of things. So thank you so much for being here, and I look forward for you guys coming with me next week.
Thank you.